Hi, I'm Rachel Holmes and welcome to my health and wellness show. Now, put your hand up if you would say that you are a sugar addict. Maybe you eat really healthily for 60-70% of the time and suddenly you decide to indulge in something sugary, a biscuit, a cake, a cookie, a chocolate, and then that starts this whole avalanche of sugar addiction that is very difficult to get back under control. Well, this interview is going to give you so much food for thought. You're going to really enjoy. It really dives deep into sugar addiction and the actual stages of being addicted to sugar and how you can overcome it. It's with Dr. Shay. I know you're going to love this and it could be life-changing for so many people. So please do share the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel and just get this message out there and make sure that you add your email to Dr. Sam Shay's list if you want more information on this fascinating topic. Well, welcome, Dr. Shay. How are you today?
I'm good, Rachel. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. We made this happen. You being in New Zealand and me being in the UK, we got there with a time difference. So thank you so much. So the big question I always like to ask all of my guests from the offset is, how did you arrive at this point? What's the backstory to Sam Shay?
The backstory started when I was 6 years old, when my parents had a very bitter divorce. In fact, it was so bad that one of my three sisters ended up in the hospital with a bleeding stress ulcer. And then I ended up with one hand on the remote controller of video games and the other hand in a big bag of sugar, whether it was Kit Kats or eating all the M&Ms. And it wasn't like a Kit Kat, it was a bag, Three Musketeers, Hershey bars, Hershey Kisses, Skittles, whatever. And even now, like breakfast cereal, like lots of honeycomb and all the rest of it. And when I look now at the label of breakfast cereals and I just cover up the word breakfast cereal, just look at the ingredients, I notice that the ingredients of breakfast cereals are pretty much indistinguishable from desserts. So I was feeding on, I thought, oh, it's cereal, it's healthy. No, it was glorified sugar. And I used sugar and video games as the two major forms to cope with the very severe stress that was going on with the divorce, and then in school being physically and verbally bullied for 10 plus years. And then when puberty hit and all the awkwardness around girls, it's just, anytime I had a new stressor, or anytime I reflected or remembered an old stressor, or when I was experiencing one in that moment, I reached for sugar and video games as the go-to crutches to try to numb out, to cope with what was going on. So my sugar addiction and video game addiction came from a desire to numb out to what was going on in here. For the purpose of this conversation, I can stick to like sugar addiction, my sugar half of my addictions. And it became something that it was really strange, because even when I was eating it, I wasn't actually enjoying it. I was just wanting relief. It was just kind of this numb trance experience of eating, and then like feeling full, and then feeling bad about what I just did, and then being down on myself, and then believing how bad I felt, and then I felt bad, and then I just want to eat more sugar, and then it just kept spiraling more and more and more and more. So fast forward, I basically decided when I was 17, 18 to change my life, because Western medicine wasn't helping me deal with my digestive problems, my depression, my moods, the physical pain I was in my back, and that was actually from hunched over playing too many video games for too long, plus a swimming injury. And I decided that I was going to take a left turn and go into natural medicine. Now, I was supposed to be the third generation medical doctor in my family. My grandfather was Dr. Harry Shay. He was the most famous gastroenterologist in Philadelphia in his era. He was actually the founding director of the Fels Cancer Research Institute at Temple University, which is still here to this day. And he's published 300 articles. Now, he actually he tragically actually died on the operating table due to medical misadventure, which happened at the beginning of my father's medical career. And my father, went on in his own direction. He became an MD and a PhD and published 2 books on post-traumatic stress disorder and got a MacArthur Genius Award. And here I am going to become a chiropractor. Right. And then later on an acupuncturist and a functional neurologist, and now a Fitgenes Practitioner. And if your audience doesn't know what that is, it's someone that does very specific genetic testing to identify 58 separate genetic variations for inflammation and redox reactions and detox and inflammation, cardiovascular and fat metabolism. And so I'm now going completely into a different direction as a multidisciplinary and holistic practitioner, and someone who was wanting to heal himself of sugar addiction and video game addiction. And what I realized from putting together all this different modalities and trainings and professions, I came up with a system that is very simple, very straightforward, very successful, and secular to deal with addictions. And I put an emphasis on secular because there's a lot of addiction programs out there that are very heavily theologically based. And that works for a lot of people, and it doesn't for a very large group of people. And I wanted my program to be religion neutral, meaning if you have a religion, fine, this is a secular model. You can just take it and tack it onto what you're doing. And if you're not religious, then this model is perfect for you because it doesn't require theology, even though the model actually shows where theology can fit in to change one's belief system. I've treated patients who are alcoholic, and they are, they say, what got them over it was prayer, but I show them the model, and I say, well, that fits right into your changing belief systems. So it's secular, so it's universal is really the word I'm looking for. And I see that sugar and video games are the 2 fastest growing addictions in the world, particularly with the advent of this in the next 3 to 5 billion people over the next 3 to 5 years. And sugar and video games literally go hand in hand, like they did for me. Kids stay up late, they eat, they reach for junk food, junk energy drinks like I did, or faster. And it's just, they go hand in hand. But the good news is that the 5-phase model to deal with addiction is the same regardless of sugar, alcohol, smoking, video games, tech, porn, workaholism, gambling, doesn't matter. It's the same 5 phases. So that's how I got here in a small sketch, yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Do you think then, Dr. Sam, that people are predisposed to being a sugar addict? Are they born with a sweet tooth, or is that a complete fallacy?
No human is immune to sugar. We are genetically helpless in the face of sugar because anthropologically we grew up in a very sugar-poor environment. Fruit was only in season a couple weeks out of the year, so a couple days or a couple weeks out of the year, maybe a couple times a year, with extremely rare exception where there are places that fruit all year round. That's very rare.
Yeah.
But there was honeycombs around maybe, but sugar was extremely rare. It was the fastest way to absorb calories and the fastest way to get calories in you. And so from this point on, it's my conjecture. I believe people go crazy, for sugar as a built-in hardwired genetic impulse to ensure you pack on as many cheap, easy calories as possible. So you go a bit berserk when you come across fruit sugar like fructose because you're supposed to, because the raspberries are only around for a couple days, and you've got to stuff yourself quickly before the bears and the other neighboring tribes come in, and you just kind of go a bit loopy. And so there's that aspect where you are genuinely genetically defenseless against sugar. The other aspect is that people have different genetic makeups in which they have variations in their MAO genes or their dopamine or their comp genes, and it's basically how you deal with neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine. Mm-hmm. And for people who have genetic variations, they can develop what's called reward deficiency syndrome, which was discovered by Dr. Ken Bloom back in 1990, I believe. I can't remember. I had the privilege of talking with this man on the phone, interviewing him, and his work is phenomenal because it showed how people who keep using a substance of choice, whether it's sugar or video games or gambling or whatever, you can actually rewire the brain. I mean, the geeky Scrabble word is called neuroplasticity, where the brain changes based on the activity and the nutrition and the stimulation and the oxygen levels you give it. So some people are more vulnerable to sugar based on their genetic wiring, but a lot of it has to do with what's in your environment. And keep in mind, sugar addiction is culturally reinforced because sugar is associated culturally with celebration and love. When grandma comes to visit, she doesn't go bringing, asparagus. Right. It's sugar, right? You don't celebrate your birthday with, liver pie. It's it's a cake. So sugar has a very culturally bound emotional association with love and celebration. And that makes sense even on an anthropological level because sugar was so rare. It was the gift you gave to someone because it was a rare, sweet treat. So the other issue going, I think it's very multifactorial, is that sugar is so heavily advertised. Yeah. On some level, it's nearly impossible to separate if you're born with a sugar craving or if you've been induced into one. Interesting. It's really tough. I mean, it's truly very tough because we have almost in modern society, we have no more isolation. We have no control group in modern society. That's what I was looking for. We have no control group anymore when it comes to sugar. Maybe this up and coming group of paleo parents, like they're doing the best they can to insulate. But the reality is that Halloween was this week. Yeah. You can't avoid. And of course, if you're the paleo parent who's the real bummer and hands out apples or glow sticks or a lecture, it's you hear about it in school, like you don't live that down, and then of course there's all sorts of horse trading in school, candy trading in school. The negotiate. I remember at summer camp, the coin of the realm at summer camp was candy bars. People would shave half their head for a candy bar or do dares for a candy, but the currency for a growing, malleable child is sugar. So a long, 5 or 6 prong answer to your question, but as you can see, sugar is so integrated into our culture. I'd be very hard pressed to find anyone that is immune to the effects of sugar, because sugar actually hits. There's really scary articles of that sugar is more addictive to children than heroin. Yeah. And it's so it is such a strong stimulus to the brain. It hits the reward center so hard, it rewires the brain, not permanently, but very strongly, particularly for a young child. And that's the same is true for this addiction or anything else, So I am hopeful, though. We have a new group of conscious health enthusiasts, new parents who are very conscious of the damaging effects of sugar and other things. People like yourself who are doing their part to educate not just individual people, but also trainers and other people who influence other people as well. Mm-hmm. and, you know, there's movies out, you know, that sugar film is a hilarious. I mean, that is, anyone watching this, that is homework.
Yeah.
Watch that sugar film. That is one of the funniest and simultaneously most tragic food films I have ever seen. And yeah, the entertainment value and the production value is just top class. I actually give that out as homework to patients who struggle with sugar.
Very good. So what would you do, Dr. Sam, then? Somebody who's watching this, who's health conscious, you know, eating maybe a paleo style, plant-based diet, doing everything they can, but still they keep falling back into the sugar. It's as if, you know, people do really well for a couple of weeks, they go off the sugar, and then suddenly they have that cake, they have that biscuit, they have that chocolate, and then boom, the avalanche starts again, and it's like that snowball, that train that is so difficult to get off. Can we do sugar in moderation? Is there such a thing, or is it really all or nothing? How does it work psychologically?
So that phrase, so when someone tells me, oh, I'm just, you know, having this in moderation, what they're really telling you is a flippant bumper stickerism to tell you to bugger off. And not tell me not to do something I know is bad for me. So that's what everything in moderation really means when someone says it to you, right?
Yeah.
Now, the reality is we should have moderation in moderation.
Yeah.
So when someone says, well, everything in moderation, I say, everything? Does that include moderation? So the reality is that we have no moderation anymore. What's a moderate amount of cell phone use compared to what? You know, a couple, 100,000 years or more of evolution. What's a moderate amount of cell phone use? What's a moderate amount of refined sugar when it didn't exist until, relatively recently? Mm-hmm. The reality is, though, I mean, we can talk in these kind of general, theoretical constructs of the Paleolithic person, but the reality of modern day human life is that there's a woman who was on a podcast. I think it was Dave Asprey's podcast. I can't remember her name, but she had this wonderful thing of moderators versus abstainers.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching that without saying it in that way. But 80% of the people who are addicted to something, they're abstainers. Yeah. They really can't have it around unless they deal with their emotional work. And then the other 20% are moderators. Now, my de facto father-in-law, like, he's just gone public that he's an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. He is one of the rare moderators where there's still the wine bottles all around the house. Wow. And I'm talking to my mother, who's also a medical doctor. I'm like, Mom, are you sure about this? And she's like, I know. He just needs it around. So he's one of the few 20%. So they're real. They exist in my family. But abstaining, moderation, that's actually a third step away from dealing with the root problem.
Okay.
So in my model for addiction, it's called the BEAST model, B-E-A-S-T. It's actually a 5, like B-E-A-S-T. It's a BEAST cycle.
Okay.
So if you really want to deal with sugar addiction, you start with B, beliefs. So the phase of addictions are: believe a stressful thought, have an emotional, physical stress response, anesthetize with a vice, in this case sugar, smolder in the consequences of your vice, have terrible thoughts about the consequences, and if you believe those terrible thoughts about yourself, then you have you feel bad, then you reach for anesthesia, then you have consequences, and you have terrible thoughts, and if you believe those, and you go round and round and round. That's the cycle, the B-E-A-S-T, the BEAST cycle. So the way to deal with the root of addiction is to resolve the underlying beliefs, to question your stressful thoughts. The second phase, the emotional physical stress response, that's about resilience. So every blueprint to correct course begins with an R. So it's resolve belief systems, resilience for the emotional physical stress response. And the way you increase resilience is you deal with the brain, the body, the biochemistry, the hormone systems. I have another framework called the 10 Pillars of Health, which is a whole other discussion, where I look at, when I assess a patient, I look at the 10 pillars: their brain, balance, their bowels, their body, their exercise, their toxins, their nutrition, their breakfast, their stress levels in their life, their gut flora or infections, and their sleep. So 10 pillars. And what I find is that 100% of my chronically ill patients, whether it's fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, addictions, digestive, whatever, anything, minimum 7 out of 10 of those pillars are crumbling. And that's why they're chronic, and that's why they get mixed or unusual or unreliable results amongst Western practitioners and alternative practitioners, because most clinicians, if they're honest, are only really good usually at only 1 to 3 pillars, not all 10. So if you have 7 plus that are crumbling, there's very few clinicians around that can identify and educate and treat all 10 at the same time. And that's what people need. So that's why people are chronic are so tough, is because they don't have that whole picture dealt with all at once. So we've got resolve, resilience, and then the third phase is what you're talking about. For the anesthesia phase, where you're reaching for your vice, sugar, video games, work, gambling, porn, alcohol, smoking, whatever it is, you restrict the vice, remove the vice, and replace the vice. Okay. So 3 different strategies to deal with the vice itself. You'll notice that the 2 stages prior, the vices are relevant. Those 2 phases are the same for regardless of what your vice is. The vice is the 3rd stage, not the 1st. And that's the biggest mistake people make when they try to deal with their addiction, is they go after the vice. That's not the best step unless the vice is so destructive. You need to buy time by doing a very harsh intervention to put a clamp down so you stop having consequences, the 4th stage. So, but most people just stay on that phase. Did you ever see the movie Flight with Denzel Washington?
No, I haven't, no.
Okay, single best visual essay on addiction in movie theaters. It is the single best one. Go watch that. He's an alcoholic, and he nailed that 1,000-yard stare of like wanting to use. Like he didn't say a word, and anyone who's ever been an addict, they know that look. They know that he nailed it. He only did phase 3. He only went around and, spoiler alert, hid the 27 places he hid alcohol on his family farm. He didn't work on his resilience, and he didn't work on his belief systems, and, spoiler, he relapses badly at the worst possible time. So go watch that movie along with that sugar film.
Okay.
So then the 4th phase is the smolder and the consequences. Now, smolder... Now, if you didn't know that was an acronym, it's smolder. I worked very hard to find this acronym to capture the emotionality of smoldering in the consequences of my vice. With these video games, it's staying up really late, being on this big sugar high, and then crash. The word itself, smolder, captures the emotionality of what it's like post-binge or post-use. But it's actually a 7-letter acronym to identify the 7 areas. This is U.S. spelling, not British spelling. It's smolder. So there's no U. The 7 different areas where people do damage in their life. So the S is societal damage, M is monetary damage, O is occupational/educational, depending if you're a kid or in the workforce. L is legal damage. D is domestic. E is energy/health, and R is relationship damage. Now, each vice varies wildly in the extent and intensity of those 7 categories. So like meth addiction has a very different legal than sugar, than video games, than food, than smoking, than work. Like, smoking in France is a totally different world than smoking in the US. Workaholism in one country is celebrated, in the other country is sneered upon. Yeah. So, but that 7 letters becomes your checklist to, here's the R word, to reverse the damage. Yeah. So that's you reverse the damage in that phase. And then the T phase, that's where the terrible thoughts post the damage you've wrought, like, oh my God, I'm weak, I'm a piece of XYZ, I'm a terrible person, I just hurt my family, my health, my job, my integrity, my blah, blah, blah. So, and the phase to deal with that is to reach out for help. This is where people need coaching. They need an online program. They need support. They need to reach out for help, because this is where the 12 steppers get their people. I am helpless in the face of my addiction. That's the I am helpless. That's the people who have hit, their bottom, where they feel they have these terrible thoughts about themselves, and they just throw up their hands and says, I am helpless. I need help.
Yeah.
Reach out for help. So that's how you would treat the whole addiction. Resolve the stressful belief systems, increase resilience, restrict, remove, replace the vice, reverse the damage, reach out for help. Now, obviously, each of those phases is a massive amount of information and checklists and frameworks and structures and step-by-step. But if people can just walk away with BEAST, B-E-A-S-T, if they can just get that, then they can catch themselves like, oh, I'm believing a stressful thought, and I'm feeling emotional. Oh, I'm in the anesthesia phase. Like, oh, I'm in the damaging. If they can just have that, then you have now put a wedge between you and the vice from spiraling worse, because now there's awareness. And I'll give you one more little framework I came up with. Tame the beast. T-A-M-E. So what's the trick to put a immediate pause in this cycle?
Yeah.
Tame. T-A-M-E. Take a breath. That's the T. So you stop and breathe. Then you accept that you're in a phase of the cycle.
Okay, yeah.
Then you make a decision to exit the cycle. Then you exit it.
Yes, great.
So it's the mnemonic. I love mnemonics. The mnemonic itself has to be instructive of what to do. And so this is the model that I want to bring. I'm actually writing my book on this at the moment. And that hopefully will be out in the next couple months. But tame the beast. If people can walk away with that, their lives can change. Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. That really makes so much sense. So do you think, kind of looking your vision down the road, that if somebody follows this program and takes that awareness away, do they ever become free of that sugar addiction? Is it just...
Yeah, absolutely. Because the root of addiction is not the vice. Yeah. It's the belief systems and the resilience, but primarily the belief systems. So some people ask me, well, is an alcoholic ever not an alcoholic anymore? And my answer is or an addict ever not an addict is only if they dealt with their belief systems and they have enough resilience to cope with their vice again. So meth is such a strong input. I'm not sure people have enough resilience to overcome that. That people can recover, but doesn't mean they can go back to it.
Yeah.
So, but there are food addicts who are still alive and they eat because they have to. So but if you deal with the belief system, then it's not an issue anymore. Like, there's plenty of people the system that I recommend to deal with belief systems, there's plenty of people who are in that system who say, quote, the addiction left them.
Okay.
Because they stopped believing their stressful thoughts.
Yeah.
So, but the key is to have a structured system in place, an education plan to learn it, and more importantly, to implement how to deal with all 5 phases of addiction. So that's the real thing that people are missing is, having a framework, having the mnemonic is great, but as you can tell, there's a lot behind it, but it is learnable and it totally is doable.
And how long would it take, Sam, to go through that process, do you think? Is it different for everyone, or is it has a certain amount of time you're working on your belief system, a certain of the time you move to the next phase, or is everyone very unique with this?
Everyone's unique, and people can learn what they need to know in a few weeks.
Okay.
It's not complex. But people can learn it in a few weeks. And the length it takes to deal with it is primarily dependent on people's willingness to examine their own belief systems. That is the real bottleneck. That's the written, if you're a chemistry geek, it's the rate limiting step.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's other phases have their varies in time. Like if you're so low resilience, you need to build up, and that may take months. Particularly if you're adrenally fatigued. And by the way, I have a paper that links adrenal fatigue to addiction. Or if your circumstance is so complex, like you're locked into this household where there's sugar everywhere, you're at work and there's candies everywhere, like to restrict and remove sugar is a bit more challenging based on your physical environment. But all of these things can be strategized, all of them.
That's interesting. So gosh, I bet people are watching this video at the moment and thinking, wow, this seems a lot. I need a bit of I need some tools here. Where can they find more information about your program, and how can they have a look at exactly what you're doing, and if they can download anything or get involved with where you're at?
Sure. I made an entire kind of a 5-page worksheet going over each of the 5 phases that people can get complimentary, and then they'll also get, with that download, they'll get another video describing this in detail with the visuals, including I put a lot of work into editing this video with the arrow pointing to this phase and pointing. So it's a really easy to follow overview of the whole thing. And they'll also be on my mailing list and then get an opportunity to look at my complete online course. But if they don't want to do the course, they don't have to. They get the worksheet. It's a complete worksheet. They'll get tons, and they'll get the free video training. They go to tamethebeastofaddiction.com. That's all one word. So tamethebeastofaddiction.com. And they just opt in with their name and email, and you'll get the worksheet, you'll get the video, and you'll get some more information on it.
That's fantastic. And where can anybody find you on social media, Dr. Sam, to say hello? And
social media. The best place to find me on social media is, I'm updating it at the moment. So the best place to go is drsamshay.com. That's drsamshay.com. Dr. Sam Shay. They'll see little Twitter or Blink, Twitty doos, whatever those things are, the little icons. But they'll also see my blog roll. There's also an article on that. You'll see my blog roll, and I've got a couple articles on addiction. I even got an article there on what to say to your friends who want you to drink during Dry July, even though you're trying not to drink. Yeah. Many articles on video game addiction. Lots of it, and also on adrenal fatigue. So just drsamshay.com, and then my social media is going through a big update at the moment, so I don't want to lead anyone astray there.
That's fabulous. Wow, well, we covered a lot there, a lot of information. So I'd like to thank you, and hopefully we can get some feedback from all our viewers, and then maybe do a part 2. That would be wonderful. So
I'd be delighted to. I love talking about this, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing to educate not only individuals, but also that the gatekeepers to natural health. It's real important. We have trainers who train other trainers, and I'm really happy that you're doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful.